Hello and welcome. Born analog, we become digital through the power of our own impulses and the constant need to become immersed in a great story. Welcome to our discussion. My name is Ben, and thank you for joining us. We are the Fanaddicts of Film.
Ooh, ooh.
Got my good buddy Joe here today.
How you doing? Thanks for joining us. So tonight we're going to talk about last week's episode of The X-Files, episode 4 of season 11, The Lost Art of the Forehead Sweats. Such a good episode.
I freaking love this episode. It's so good.
It's so good. This was another one of the humorous episodes of The X-Files, done right. This one was written by Darren Morgan, who also directed it, brother of executive producer Glenn Morgan. Darren Morgan previously has written episodes for the series like Humbug, Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, he also did Jose Chung's From Outer Space and War of the Coprophages. And then the last season, season 10, he also did Mulder and Scully Meet the Weremonster, one of my favorite episodes. And for the sister series Millennium, he wrote Jose Chung's Doomsday Defense. And somehow Satan got behind me. I don't know if you guys ever watched the sister series Millennium, but he likes to inject a lot of humor into his stuff.
I do remember that show Millennium, but just only barely.
Yeah. This episode, I don't know, man. I think this is one of the strongest ones they've done this season. It's just a fantastic episode. It plays off the whole Mandela effect, which is gaining a lot of popularity in pop culture right now, or the Mingala effect. You know, if you've seen the episode, by the way, spoilers going into this. As we said, we are the Fanaddicts of Film, but we also love television too. That's why we're going to be talking about the X-Files tonight. So if you want to go ahead and start off on that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say first of all how much I love the X-Files, and for anybody who hasn't seen the show, hasn't watched it, it is on Hulu right now, and it is one of my favorite shows of all time, and it's so extremely creative. This particular episode opens up with just like this, kind of a fake episode, an old episode of Twilight Zone. So anyway, let's check this out. So you were gonna say something about this scene. I think you had any specific.
No, it was a really clever throwback to the old Twilight Zone, even though obviously this isn't an episode that's a part of that series. In fact, Mulder even says it was a knockoff series called Dusky Realms, which of course didn't exist. But I love they did a good job at kind of recreating that early 1960s feel. I mean, you can tell it's not from that era, but they do a good job, especially with the sort of comic sound effects that come from this guy. Once this guy right here, the cold open, it's a guy sitting at a bar talking to a bartender, claiming that he's surrounded by aliens, that he just saw one out of the corner of his eye through the window, and the bartender turns to him and says, "It's not a window, it's a mirror." So the guy walks up to the mirror and sees his true alien self. He's the lost Martian, and he has a freak out moment. He goes to cover his mouth, but then all of a sudden these multiple other arms come out and kind of slap him in the head in a very, very comical style with a lot of sound effects, and it's great.
And I actually did, and before you told me that this was, like, I literally thought this was a remake. I mean, I could tell, of course, that they had filmed this for the show, but I literally thought that this was a remake of an actual X-Files episode, and of an old Twilight Zone episode. So anyway,
plus it had guest star Brian Husky playing a character who might have been with the X-Files, but not really. His name's in the show. It's Reggie something. You might know Brian Husky from he's been in a lot of television shows and a lot of films. He's an incredibly funny guy. He's been involved with the Upright Citizens Brigade. He's been on shows like Children's Hospital, Parks and Recreation. He's currently on People of Earth on TBS. Nick Swardston's Pretend Time. He's done some Funny or Die stuff, some Arrested Development, some Curb Your Enthusiasm. Movies like This Is the End. He's one of those faces that you recognize. You go, where do I know that guy from? He's really funny. And I think he kind of stole the show on this one. David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson were certainly great. It's another good. Darren Morgan has a tendency to write either darkly humorous episodes like Humbug or Clive Bruckman's Final Repose, or like kind of episodes that almost make the sort of self-mocking, like Jose Chung's From Outer Space and The Lost Art of the Forehead Sweats, or just kind of turns it in on itself, and not only is making fun of the conventions of science fiction, and in this particular case, the Mandela effect or the Mingla effect. But I love the way he gets Mulder and Scully to sort of, it's almost like, kind of like, not quite breaking the fourth wall, but the way that they make fun of their own characters and the show itself. It's just so good.
What was it specifically you said that all three of the three actors said the same phrase? What was it again? I can't remember what you said.
Oh yeah. They if you notice throughout this episode, they all three characters do a whole what? Wait, what? Kind of moment, which caught me off guard because I kept hearing it repeatedly. It kind of became like in Star Wars, it's I got a bad feeling about this. It kind of became that sort of motif, which I thought was hilarious.
My favorite, probably one of my favorite parts of this episode is when they actually get Scully to say, "Really, I'm out."
Yeah. I also love the fact that within the story, so basically within the story, Mulder and Scully encounter a man named Reggie something, who claims to that he doesn't really know who he is, but he's starting to remember. But it's the Mandela effect. He's starting to remember things differently. But he calls it the Mangala effect, based on if you're not familiar with the Mandela effect, it's the idea that began with people remembering things incorrectly, like people swearing up and down in the 80s that they heard that Nelson Mandela had died in South Africa in prison, when in fact he didn't. He died in 2013, or was it 2012? He had been free from prison for a while. But in the show, in the context, Reggie's character argues that it's the Mengele effect after Joseph Mengele. After there were rumors of Joseph, people remember Joseph Mengele being the former Nazi doctor, being caught in Ohio, like in the 1960s, when in fact he died in South America. But
and I loved how they actually used people's last names, like the mingle effect. I literally just thought it was just having to do with something that was mingling, but they just messed with his last name instead.
Very clever. In fact, when Reggie something begins to believe that he's actually been a part of the X-Files since the beginning, and that's one of my favorite things, is when they started including clips of previous episodes, including redoing the opening sequence to include him, where it shows the characters on their card instead of David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson. It's Fox Mulder, Dana Scully, Reggie something, and how they incorporated clips from episodes like the pilot episode, Tombs, Clyde Bruckman's Final Repose, Home, Small Potatoes, and Unusual Suspects.
But really quickly, let's just go back to here. Our Mulder Swamp Thing moments.
Oh yeah.
What did you call? What did you say?
He's in a ghillie suit. Yeah, he's squatting. He was going out looking for Sasquatch. Sasquatch, and that's what I think it was.
I think it's so funny. It's like I always thought, like being through these 10 seasons, you think Mulder's past all that. You think that he's done, or at least done with some part of it. So much of me is always, at least every time we do this new season, this new 11th season, you think, okay, he's gone over to the side where he is, a lot of him is skeptical, along with Scully, but seeing him just he's just hanging out in the swamp looking for a Sasquatch, like just as he would have been doing in season 1 or season 2 or whatever.
Even though he actually goes on to say that it's just an excuse to get out of the house and get some fresh air, which I got a kick out of. And I love how the fact that the whole Mandela effect, God, now I'm going to be calling it the Mandela effect. The whole Mandela effect plays on the idea of possible either our entire subconscious has been re-altered, or it's different dimensions that have crossed paths. With the string theory, we're constantly, is the Berenstein Bears or is it the Berenstein Bears? That kind of stuff. But I love how every time Mulder is the less skeptical in this episode, talking about alternate dimensions, and nobody, not even Reggie, something will humor him on that one.
Or even my actually one of my favorite things is about this episode is they were talking specifically about like these moments that transport you back into being a child. Like Scully says something about we'll get to that in a second. Scully says specifically, she says like God, Jesus, war, America. She was talking about Jello. I don't know if you remember that. There was a specific type of Jello that she was calling it like ABC Jello or 1, 2, 3 Jello, and it was she had remembered it as ABC, but it was 1, 2, 3 or vice versa, whatever. It was something completely different that she had remembered, and she had associated all these experiences with it in her childhood and all the things that she had experienced with her mother making it, etc. All these things, but she literally had all these like. She was propelled into all these chapters in her life because of this stupid little piece of Jello, and then Mulder, of course, saying specifically that this episode of the Twilight Zone had done that. This was his first episode, and getting into that, this was a great moment showing young little Fox at the
Oh no, that scene right there is one of the funniest scenes they've ever done in the X-Files. I mean, look at that. And the whole, wait, what? Oh, I get it. Like watching the episode as a kid. Oh man, that just
funny.
Brilliant.
So funny.
Absolutely brilliant.
I love it.
Plus, I really like the way that.
You said he threw the popcorn down and he said something?
Popcorn fall. He goes, wait, what? And the popcorn falls off.
Yeah.
And then he sits back and he's like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah, right.
But one of the things that I thought was funny was when it was Reggie's flashbacks, he's the same age. Like he supposedly worked in Granada in the 1980s, but he looks exactly the same. I thought that was kind of clever. That it just what the hell? Like the alien encounters in this episode are so comical. It just. I mean, it's going to be hard to kind of go into next week's episode because it's going to be a lot more serious and somber. I mean, this episode even plays around with its own reality, where Mulder actually, one part of halfway through the episode, he's got everything, all the plot points mapped out on his wall, and he even says he's lost the plot because it starts to get so not convoluted but absurd. It just starts to get more and more absurd as it twists and turns. That he's even mentioning things that really happen and really exist, but stating that there's no evidence. For instance, the 1998 Grammys, Bob Dylan playing, the guy comes out with the soy bomb on his, half naked. He's like, does that even happen? There's no footage of this, to prove, but there is. You can go and look on YouTube and stuff.
Do you remember the name of this guy again? I can't remember the name of the artist you were talking about that had done this.
No, I can't remember the name, but I did look him up, and the guy who did the soy bomb is actually still working performance artist, I think, in New York. But I mean, I just thought it was funny how it played with actual events and posited them as they didn't exist, while fictional events had really transpired. And then it brings you to Dr. or is it Professor They?
Really quickly, what is a soy bomb? I don't even know.
What was the soy bomb?
Is it an actual bomb, or is it just something that's kind of?
Well, I think within the context of the show, they try and posit that it's actually something that is related to like a government experiment, but really what it was. Michael Portnoy, that's the guy's name. Let's see here. I'm having to look this up, folks.
You don't have to.
But soy bomb. Let's see here. Yeah. He explains it's a 2-word poem, and soy represents dense natural life. Bomb is obviously an explosive, destructive force. So soy bomb is what I think art should be. Dense, transformational, explosive life. So it doesn't really have any link to any actual conspiracy theory, but within the context of the show, they do sort of link it into this thing, which I thought was hilarious, that they just kind of fires on all kinds of different cylinders to the point where by the end of the episode, you're even questioning it yourself. I mean, Reggie, you find out he's not really with the X-Files, but he has been an FBI agent as well as a banker and a CIA analyst, and you know, but and you know,
I love how that whole sequence they show him in the same cubicle.
Yeah,
he's literally in the same cubicle the whole time. He's waterboarding somebody. Forgive us for joking about that, but
no, it's absurd because it starts off he's in the cubicle and he's what is he doing at first?
He's like IRS guy. He's like an IRS guy.
Yeah, at first,
initially.
No, he attacks the second one. The second one he becomes an IRS tax guy, and then the third one he's like waterboarding somebody right there in the cubicle. Somebody's walking past him while he's holding the water, and then just waves to him like no big deal. And the whole cubicle thing, I mean, it's just absurd because because then he becomes a wiretapper, and it's just all in the same cubicle, which is just part of the absurdity of the episode.
So I just have to show everybody this just one more time. What a priceless, wonderful moment of Dave Duchovny as a little boy with a giant head, with his adult head. Great moment.
One of the cutest things.
I just remembered being so blown away and flabbergasted by that whole scene. Okay, and this is where Mulder and Scully are in that. Yeah, and they're meeting finally trying to figure out who this guy is, and actually realizing Reggie something is someone that may have been their partner, or at least he claims that he was. And then this is the whole thing about them having their this one is a little bit out of order. This is actually he's about to show him the video, the YouTube video by Professor They, but before then it goes to clips of him. We'll go back to that. Death by Lawn Dart. And I thought that was a great moment. My favorite moment in this, Scully's like, so what are those things? She didn't even know what a lawn dart was, and he's like, oh, they're metal darts, metal sheaths or whatever that kids would try to throw into it. I remembered actually having them, but I don't remember what they were actually.
No, they existed, but I mean, they didn't last long in the open market because it was just too dangerous,
What was it that Scully says? She's like, and they let kids have that, and Mulder's like,
we were made of sterner stuff back
then. Such a great moment, and impaled by lawn dart.
Well, I mean, there was a time when kids used to play with horseshoes, so But move on from this. So he has a moment where Reggie believes he's a member of, has been a part of the X-Files prior to Scully showing up. So in like halfway point of the episode, or near halfway point, it starts over with a revamped version of the opening sequence with this guy inserted, Reggie something, played by Brian Husky. The theme song is redone.
The whole Manhattan transfer moment in X-Files.
It's so clever. They cleverly insert him into several of the show's past episodes, which I mentioned before. A couple of them were written by Darren Morgan, so that's kind of funny. Self-referential again. Self-referential. This episode, I love it because it's right up there with Jose Chung's From Outer Space. It really takes the concept and the characters and just totally lets them have fun making fun of themselves. There's overacting. There's bad reactions to things. It's just so clever.
And the best part of this whole sequence of them showing Reggie, oh, here he is, Reggie's in their lives, and we've never seen him before, but they're retconning the whole thing. There are like moments where you literally think, because of the way that the X-Files has always throws off your expectations and thinks you're one way but you're not, etc. For moments I was actually thinking, okay, so he was there the whole time. Like, is he going to be a new character in this whole new X-Files experience of season 11?
Yeah, which would have been a great, if they had retconned the entire thing and posited that he had been a part of the X-Files the whole time, I would have been fine with that, but it would have taken away any serious credibility and darkness from the show, because in some of the clips, even at dark moments, he's the comic relief. But he does it in such a good way. I really like Brian Husky a lot.
He's great.
If you haven't
what
watched,
else has he been in?
People of Earth currently right now on
Okay.
TBS. It's a great science fiction sitcom.
That's a current show that's on
It's a
right now?
current
Okay.
show. They just wrapped up the second season just a few months ago. Excuse me. So the third season should be coming out, I think, this spring or summer. And it's from Conoco, Conan O'Brien's company. Brian Husky's also a producer on Conan's show on TBS. He used to be a writer for
That's
Conan.
where that's where I've seen him before. Any of you who know me know that I adore Conan O'Brien. My dream gig has been to be
On Conan?
just be one of the musicians in Conan's band.
Yeah.
In just the band, because then you get to play music and you. Anyway, you play music during the day and you have on a comedy show on Conan's show, and then you have your nights off. So that's whatever.
Well, and I think you'd probably recognize him, especially now after this episode. I think people are probably going to recognize him even more. But he's been in so many good television shows and films. He was a semi-regular on Children's Hospital. I mean, I mentioned a lot of these before. Children's Hospital was one of my favorite shows on Adult Swim.
I don't think I've ever.
It was part of the same loose continuity as NTSF SDSUV, which stands for National Terrorist Strike Force San Diego Sport Utility Vehicle. It's a mouthful. Which is also part of the same loose continuity as Newsreaders and Eagleheart with Chris Elliott. So it was one of the best runs on Adult Swim. All live action programs. These aren't cartoons, but he played Chet, the ambulance driver that nobody likes. And he's good at being sympathetic and silly and kind of pitiful at the same time. But he looks like a guy that you know. Like, I've met guys that look like this and act like
he's
this.
great. He's a great character. This is a great moment. Sorry, everybody. There we go. That's better. So yeah, that's a great moment. And as I was saying to Joe before, like this, in my personal opinion, this is like one of the most iconic moments of television history of the '90s, of that decade, and of seeing Mulder and Scully, with their deer in the headlights moment, and
just look at his reaction. Like he just steals the thunder. It's so damn funny. Yeah, no, this is truly. This episode actually has a 100% certified fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes already. It is like universally praised now. I think is going to be one of the all-time great comedy episodes of the X-Files. I mean, of course, when you watch the X-Files, you don't necessarily think of comedy, but it's like Star Trek, like classic Trek. They can do a lot of serious, heady drama, social, discussing social, political issues through science fiction, and then every now and then they do just a 180 and just do something completely humorous. And when the X-Files does it, they do it well.
That they do. And it's like, just really quick side note, just on the X-Files. I know, forgive me, I always do this on every X-Files episode that we do, you and I have done, Joe. It's like, to me personally, like I really don't think sci-fi and television would have gone anywhere where, having lost all these things, would not have been achieved without the X-Files. So anyway, it's such a wonderful creative.
And I'm going to have to posit that the X-Files wouldn't have existed without the Twilight Zone, the Outer Limits, Kolchak the Night Stalker, the Invaders, and Twin Peaks. Yes. So, but I mean, that's how television works,
Okay.
Yeah. This episode. Okay, so this is in a flashback to the actual first episode. Or no, it's not the first episode. It's right before then. It's that flashback episode about how Mulder meets the lone gunman prior to Scully joining the X-Files. And Reggie is calling him on the phone. And he's like, check out this poster I got. This brand new poster. You're going to love it, man. Which is so cool. By the way, I have that poster and that magnet on my refrigerator. I love it.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So let's just show them the whole thing here real quick. So yeah, I do always want to believe. I always want to believe.
Yeah. I'd like to, but I'm a bit of a Scully these days.
So this was, go ahead. Yeah.
So side note, this was from the episode Home, probably one of the most graphically disturbing X-Files episodes ever.
We talked about this last time.
We did. And I just want to point this out for two reasons. One, they insert Reggie into this scene where they pull. This is a mother. What's her name? Miss Peacock, I think. Where she's.
I don't remember.
She's like an amputee, basically living underneath the bed of a dilapidated home where her sons continually get it on with her to produce offspring. Most of which they end up throwing away because they're just it's all about like incredible incest, just to the point where it's just mutated these people. But the funny thing is they put Reggie in this scene, and he's just making some, like, he comes to the realization of what they're doing with their mom, and it's just like this whole like disgusting thing. But the funny thing is this is the same actress who played the psychic twins in the episode before this one of this season with the Hangman episode. It's the same actress, and she's also been in, I believe, 2 other episodes of the X-Files, playing different characters as well, which you probably wouldn't even know because she's very chameleon-like.
I hadn't even realized that she, and if you hadn't pointed out to me, I just would not even remembered. So she played both the sister and the brother of her last episode.
Yeah.
I hadn't. That's crazy. I didn't even know that. I hadn't even known that until you pointed that out. So
yeah.
Such a This is like one of your top 5 episodes of.
Home. It's not a fun episode. It's just a very dark and disturbing episode.
Extremely unique.
It's the complete polar opposite of the episode that we're talking about, The Lost Art of the Forehead Sweats. Home is like the polar opposite. It's as dark and gruesome and twisted as the X-Files are famous for. And that's what I love, is the juxtapose, where you can get an episode that's really dark and twisted and makes you kind of go, ugh, that's gross, but really compelling. And then the next week they have an episode like this that's just completely absurd and whimsical and just extremely fun to watch and to rewatch. I've watched this episode twice now. And another new character in the show, which I kind of hope they bring back, although I don't think they ever will, is it Dr. They or Professor? I think it's Professor They. Reggie keeps talking to Mulder and Scully about they are messing with our memories, and they are causing the Mangala effect.
And she says specifically, no, it's Mulder that says that. Mulder says, specifically, you keep pointing, who are you going to, who is this person, who are they going to become? Like, who, you have to eventually decide who they are.
And they winds up being an actual person. And this is him. Apparently he's a mentalist who is so good that he is like hypnotized. If you haven't seen the episode, there is a YouTube video that he himself creates and puts online that actually tells the truth. But as he says later on when Mulder actually meets him, nobody would believe it. It's just so far-fetched because he's basically hypnotized the entire culture into forgetting things, essentially sort of starting the Mandela effect or the Mangala effect. However you want to call it. I have a feeling the Mangala effect, it's now going to be 10 years from now, it's going to be one of those things where people are like, no, it's the Mangala effect.
It'll be the Mingdela.
The Mangala effect.
Mangdela effect. And that was actually a great moment, especially because he ends up correcting Mulder. No, it's this. He corrects Scully, and then he eventually corrects Mulder. So there's this constant like what is it, dominant type thing.
Well, did you notice the darkness around his eyes, like the purplish haze? I'm guessing that's because he's got incredible mental powers, and so apparently it gives you like a purple mask around the eyes. I don't know. Either way, I really liked his character. Every time I say this was my favorite scene or favorite moment, then the next moment comes on and it's just as good. Like, it's just consistently good.
Is this part of the YouTube? Is this part of the YouTube video here?
Yes, it is. So? That's what he's talking about. Mind control experiments. Like, it plays around with the whole U.S. invasion of Grenada. Which is another key factor.
And what floored me is that Scully's like, what was that again?
Yeah.
She's like, she normally, like in every other X-Files episode, she's just like, oh, it's the bubble of the boat, and she had a moment where she didn't know.
Yeah, in this episode, she's unaware of the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
She's unaware of the U.S. involvement in Grenada, which I'm not even fully aware.
I wasn't either. It was just funny, yeah.
Of course, I was a child in the 80s, and that's not something I paid attention to because, I had G.I. Joe and Star Wars. But, this episode, she is actually, like, completely out of her element because there's so much it's all based in popular culture, and there's so much that she just doesn't, she's not up to date on, which I thought was great.
I loved it. Okay, and this is
statues are so cool.
So this is a great moment, like especially you said this was in.
It's in Canada. It's in.
Is it in Vancouver?
I'm not sure if it's in Vancouver. I'd have to take a look online, but it's definitely in Canada because that's where most of the X-Files is filmed. I think seasons like 6 through 9, they moved to LA to finish out the series, but the majority of it's filmed in Vancouver. But this is where Mulder is meeting Professor They, and he is shaming him. He says, "Kids today, they don't even know what this means." Because
what does he say? What does he say? He says something about like, and you'll magna poop or something. He says something like he comes up with like there's a new word. He's like there's a new word, and then you really want to die.
Oh yeah, the kids will figure out a way. Well, it all ties into something. It all ties into that he says that nobody shames anybody anymore,
right?
Because nobody is accountable for anything. Everybody's got a reason.
Placing blame on something.
Exactly, but I love how he's shaming Mulder for just now discovering who he is, and he's fully aware of who Mulder is. And I'm sure the X-Files.
Did you say that you did? You said I think before we were talking about this sculpture specifically, and you said that it was like a lot of the it's like the same.
Oh, it was character. It was done by a Chinese artist, and basically they're self-portraits of several versions of him laughing, and it's obviously over-exaggerated, bigger head, odd body, but it's a very beautiful, cool, and slightly eerie kind of statue and atmosphere. And there's one shot, we don't have a picture of it, but when the conversation between Mulder and they ends, and they walks away, the camera just pans back from Mulder standing in front of one of these statues, the one that's doing this, which is kind of symbolic, like I don't know, and just the way the camera pulls back and you get all the other statues surrounding Mulder. It's just an incredibly cinematic image that I thought was really good. It was
beautiful. Here's another moment where it's there's that.
Yeah, see, look, Raccoon Eyes. How is that?
That's great. That was a great one. I was blown away by this. This scene was really, really great.
Yeah. It's just so clever. The dialogue was so crisp, and that's another thing. In this particular episode, the dialogue just pops, man. It's totally compelling. Like you're hanging on to every word while you're laughing and going, "Oh, I got to back that up because I was just laughing. I didn't even hear that last part." That's why I had to watch the episode twice or 2.5 times now, because there's so many moments where I just laughed and I had to back it up and like, what did I just miss?
Right. Okay. So this was a great. Oh yeah, and so just really quick before we continue, so there's that whole moment where he somehow witnesses a Martian, someone or an alien coming down to help them with something, and I can't remember. Do you remember what it was that they were helping him with? Anyway, it's like he's trying to.
What's their last case? Reggie says while he's trying to convince Mulder and Scully that he was part of the X-Files, but they've forgotten because the Mandela effect has changed things and how they remember it. Which is funny because basically it's just an episode about faulty memories, because we all know how memories work, right? Yeah. And I mean, it's never exactly what happened, but. He's basically saying, ask him, do you remember our last case? And so they go, okay, what was our last case? And it's basically the three of them driving out to where Voyager 1 has returned, which is hilarious because Voyager 1 is now an interstellar satellite. Yeah. It launched in 1977. It is now out of the solar system. So what's happening is somehow it's crash landed back on Earth, and they find the gold record and everything, and it's because... aliens.
So that's what that is. Okay,
aliens.
To that. That's what that is, everybody.
Yeah, Voyager 1.
So I hadn't even realized that. I forgot. That's what that was. Oh, cool.
The Voyager 1 space probe. I'm fascinated by it because it's now an interstellar vehicle.
And just really quickly about the memory thing. I just remember that's what it was when Scully says, "Forget this, I'm out." Because she says, "Oh, we're talking about remembering stuff now? Oh, I thought we were talking about forgetting stuff. I'm out of here."
New memories? Yeah, I'm out.
It's just a great moment. Like I never thought Scully would say, "I'm out," but anyway, So this was a great moment, hilarious moment, extremely funny because it's like my favorite part about the scene is that there is literally to their left as they're pulling up to their left there's a landing. I think it's actually in motion landing as flying saucer that's landing, and they look over. Oh, there's Voyager just sitting there. It's like they don't.
Yeah. And the funny thing too is that again, it's playing with reality because the Voyager So in 2012, Voyager actually left our solar system. It's got about 2 years left of energy, battery reserve before it starts. NASA starts shutting it down piece by piece before it finally goes. It's going to take, I think it was something like 300 years to actually get through the interstellar space to the ring that separates our solar system from Alpha Centauri. But unfortunately, it won't be activated by then.
Forgive me for interrupting. Where is Alpha Centauri again?
Alpha Centauri is the next solar system, the nearest solar system to us, but it's like millions of light years away, so we'll never be able to just like travel to it. But what they're positing in this episode when they go, and they're seeing an alien craft. Well, right before the spaceship lands, it's a very retro.
It's a great
60s flying saucer, like right out of the Invaders.
Or either that, or Stand Still. Reminded me moments of where the Earth
did the Earth
stood still.
But basically, what they're saying here is that when they encounter this alien, and it's the most absurd alien, it's just hilarious.
Well, it's the same alien that was when Reggie had witnessed doing his telepathy.
And I'm not positive. I need to double check on this, but I believe the voice, the alien that they encounter, communicates telepathically. But his voice, it sounded very much like Nibbler's voice on Futurama. It may be the same voice actor. I'm not 100% certain on that, but it's very similar. Basically, they meet this alien who takes forever to get off his spacecraft. The handrail comes up, and he just keeps going down the escalator slowly, and you're thinking, what the hell? And then he goes and gets on a Segway that sounds like a Jetsons car. It's all just right up to them.
I forgot about that.
And then he tells them that basically they have put a force field around the universe, or around our solar system, not the universe, but around our solar system, which is why they give us back the Voyager probe. Like, according to this show, it didn't actually make it to interstellar space. It was intercepted by these aliens. What did he call it? He called it our music. He's like,
I don't.
Basically, the alien is telling humans. He's telling the agents here. We tolerate you, but we don't really like you. We don't want you to go outside of your solar system, so you explore Uranus all you want.
They built a wall. He said they built a wall?
Yeah.
It's like a Trump.
Oh, it was very much a Trump commentary right there. He says it would be a big and beautiful wall, but it's invisible, so you won't be able to see it. Trust me, though, he does all these like weird... There's actually quite a few allusions to the current POTUS. We're not going to get into a political discussion, but I thought it was great the way they took nice little jabs. Because basically the alien's saying Trump-isms, if that's even a word. I mean, he makes up words, so I'm going to make this word up. But he says things like, "You're not sending us your best people. You're all rapists," and these type of things that Trump has said about other cultures and other people. Right. And what's funny too is then he says, "We're giving you back your," what did he call it? Not an MP3 player, but he called it like a music device. Basically, he's saying that Voyager's like an MP3 player. A music sampler. We're giving you back your music sampler because there's a gold record in Voyager 1 that has several popular songs by people like I believe Bowie and the Beatles, but it's also got sounds, children's choir singing, whale songs, ocean sounds, wind, everything to kind of exemplify Earth. And I love how he's like, "We're returning your music sampler to you." It's so good.
Here's your giant MP3 player.
There he is on the Segway.
That was such a great I hadn't realized that it was a Jetsons.
It's straight up a Hanna-Barbera sample from the Jetsons. It sounds just like George Jetson's little suitcase flying car.
I love it that I love it. There you go.
See, that right there, that design right there, I kid you not, that is so close to the Invaders, it's as if they had updated the 1967 paranoid sci-fi series for a 21st century audience. The design is so similar, more so than The Day the Earth Stood Still, just by the round rules and everything in it, but very retro. Very retro chic.
I loved it. It's such a great episode. Oh, here we go. Don't you know I'm Fox freaking Mulder?
That's right.
That
Fox
was a great
freak
moment.
out. So there's a moment in the episode where Fox is the first 3 encounters with Reggie, and we probably should have established this early on. Stream of consciousness, folks. We're just going with how I remember.
And honestly, like, if you haven't seen the episode, our discussion is probably
wasted.
Just so it's probably just not nearly as interesting. Like if you've seen
the
if you've seen the episode, then this conversation is actually somewhat fun. I guess I don't know.
We're going to have to start after our mission statement by also warning people spoilers, and we'll probably just put it on the post.
Yeah, it'll be.
So if we've ruined this for you, feel free to comment on how terrible we are as human beings.
Yes.
But if you like what we're saying, please, we welcome comments on that too. This moment right here. Mulder and Scully keep meeting Reg in the parking garage of the Bureau.
Do you know who I am? I'm Fox Mulder.
And Reggie keeps disappearing because these shadowy people keep showing up, which later on you find out, and this is another plot point, spoiler. Again, when you find out who Reggie really is, then he was not a member of the X-Files, but he had suffered a concussion in Grenada, which messed up his memory, which is why he has done so many cubicle-type jobs for the government. Basically, in this particular scene, these strange men start approaching Reggie. Reggie takes off. Mulder goes to find them. But before he can get up the stairway here where Reggie took off, he turns around and there's 2 guys approaching him. They all pull out their FBI badge. They're all FBI agents. Mulder and Scully and 2 other guys.
FBI.
And basically the 2 guys are wondering why Mulder doesn't know who Reggie is, and that the Fox Mulder that they had heard of, the legendary Fox Mulder, would have known. And they kind of comment, that's what happens when you get old. When you're young, you got a fire in your belly and you want it, but as you get old, you become fat. And that just sets Mulder off, man. He just gets pissed off. And as they're walking away, he just starts throwing a tangent. Do you know who I am? I'm Fox Mulder.
I was fighting the power and breaking conspiracies before you saw your first chemtrail.
You punks.
And then you had to explain to me why I didn't even know it. I hadn't even heard of it. The streaming from
Jetcraft.
From Jetcraft, you see that your whole life. Didn't know that it was called chemtrail.
Well, I think the terminology is fairly new, but it's all part of the conspiracy theories that are out there. That's another thing. How many conspiracy theories do they go through in this episode? Mandela effect, chemtrails. I know that there's more we've talked about, but this episode just plays around with the whole, and it's so pop culture too. This right here was great too. This is when basically after the alien tells them, we don't want you here, but to show that there's no hard feelings, here's a book that explains everything.
Oh, that's right. Here are all the answers to everything.
All the answers. And Mulder, goes back to Mulder at the beginning when he was in his ghillie suit and he was out Sasquatching, just kind of squatting, waiting for Sasquatch.
Sasquatting for Squatch.
He opens up the book. And to find out, what it says about Sasquatch, and then he's like, "No, I don't believe it. It's not true," and throws the book and falls on the ground and starts throwing a little temper tantrum. And that's where this moment plays in. Well,
and this
the end of the X-Files.
And this skip is just so hilarious because it just makes me think of how many times in this 11-season show where they were like, "Oh no, it's time to end the X-Files."
Well, let's see. They ended it after the 5th season, shortly before the movie. Then they ended it again after the series was done, in between the season 9 and season 11. Because when they came back in season 11, even in the movie, I want to believe the X-Files have been dissolved. So that this would, if this was real, it would have been like technically the 4th time.
So honestly, for anybody who hasn't seen like the first few seasons, which if you haven't, you're crazy because it's so good. It's so good. Going into the 2nd season. Sorry, Mulder. The X-Files are, they're done.
Yeah.
It's over. It's over with. You're getting a new assignment and you're getting a new partner. Anyway. Sorry, spoiler. Forgive me. But you just need to see the first few seasons, and you'll be hooked. It's just such an amazing show. It's like my favorite show of all time. Oh, this is a great moment. They have I literally thought, and I know this is just stupid, but I thought of the Ghostbusters mobile
Oh yeah, because nobody uses an ambulance like that. Again, it's kind of playing around with things anachronistically. You find out Reggie, yes, he has worked for the FBI. Yes, he was in Granada. Yes, some of the things he thought were real. But as it turns out, he had a breakdown. So he had the concussion. So that's why they relegated him to desk work, even waterboarding a desk. Right. And then he becomes a wiretapper, and he's listening in on conversations. And it's funny because he's listening into an actual major political scandal, and then he's bored with it, so he flips over and he hears Mulder and Scully talking, and that's where he gets the idea that he's been on the X-Files ever since. Not at first. I mean, he's just enjoying their conversations, their adventures, monitoring them. But then he has a mental breakdown and goes to an insane asylum, and that's when he starts to believe that he's been a part of the X-Files. And then eventually, after the truth is revealed, he finally accepts that he's kind of crazy, and he gets taken away. And as they're putting him in the paddy wagon to take him off to the loony bin, I love when Mulder's just sympathetically like, we'll visit you in the asylum, and he's just like, no, you won't. They're like,
it's a great.
We won't.
And that's the best part is that they don't even answer. They're just like, he's right.
He's right.
And we won't. And it's actually really sad to me because I actually, you at the end of this episode, I have an endearment to him. Like you really feel like you care. You dig this guy. He's this crazy person who's obviously won't be a part of their story again. We probably will never see him in an X-Files episode. Maybe we might, but
he's actually in the second episode of the season. And with the episode, the second episode of season 11, when Langley, bringing back one of the lone gunmen, Langley in the computer, his consciousness.
Oh, that's right.
Computer.
I love that episode.
It's going through the X-Files database. In the computer, it actually shows an image of Reggie, foreshadowing this episode. So I thought that was really clever. But then again, another final twist. As he's been taken away by the ambulance, Skinner comes out and sees him in the ambulance.
That's right.
It was, what are they doing with Reggie? So it just kind of... So I guess he still was working for the FBI when he had his breakdown. I don't know. It's so clever.
Skinner knew him. I just always love Skinner's moments. He's just always like, Mulder.
Yeah, but
doing his thing.
Skinner and the trust factor, it's like one season he's their ally, the next season he's their enemy.
You do fall in love with him, though. You do. I've always loved... I don't know what it is about Skinner. I think Skinner's great.
It's a testament to Mitch Pileggi's acting and characterization.
Yeah,
which is weird because I never, would have... I was never overly familiar with the actor when I started watching the X-Files. It was like maybe 2 seasons in when I went, oh, that's Horace Pinker from Wes Craven's Shocker. He's the supernatural villain, the guy who's electrocuted and then comes back to life. But he's also the high school security guard in 3 O'Clock High, which was filmed in Ogden High. In Moscow. Yeah. It's so crazy.
Anyway, thanks for even listening to us. Again, my name is Ben, and this is Joe, my lifelong friend. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Fanaddicts of Film. And we're just, if we were going to be doing some Star Trek episodes, because we both love Star Trek. I think I love Star Trek almost as much as you do.
You mean Discovery?
Discovery? Yeah, we were going to, but I'm not caught up. So
we've only got like 3 episodes before the end of the season.
But the next thing is the next thing that I was going to get to is if you even like this channel, if you like us at all, if you like what we have to say or dig our review at all, please let us know if you want to hear us talk about Star Trek, because we actually love Star Trek so much, both, and I love it almost as much as Joe does. So, yeah.
And I probably love Star Wars almost as much as you. I am definitely, I love Star Wars.
Yeah.
I love Star Trek a little bit more. It's kind of like I love Marvel, but I'm a little bit more of a DC guy. I love Ninja Tune Records, but I'm a little bit more of a Warp Records guy. It happens. But please tell us what you think. I'm going to give this episode a perfect 4 stars. 4 out of 4 for me. Ben has a different rating system.
I'm going to give it 3 puppy dogs out of 15 bunny rabbits. No, I'm gonna give it.
It's a IQ factor right there.
So I don't know if it's anything at all, let alone something, or nothing. But anyway, just thanks again, and I hope you guys have a great night or day, whatever it is that you are doing.
Stay